So as a first step to being able to write your own 4-part music or start writing some 4-part voice leading, I like to start with cadences. So cadences, like I said in the other video, are 2 chords that sort of end a section, a phrase, or the whole song. They sound like endings. And there are 3 types. There's actually more than 3, but these are the 3 main ones: authentic, plagal, and deceptive cadences. Your authentic cadences, and I'll see if I can get some audio on top of this so that you can hear it, is a 5-1. It's the thing that feels like the ending. The 4-1 also feels like an ending, but it's more like the amen at the end of like a hymn. And I'll play it for you here. The deceptive cadence is what you use when you want to keep going. So it starts out with a 5. The listener might expect it to go 5 or 5-7 to 1, but instead it goes 5 to 6, and it sounds something like this. Okay, so there's some things that you need to know when writing cadences. And again, right now we have everything in root position, so you won't have to worry about anything but the root being in the bass line. Okay, so first thing, cadence writing. We have, the first thing that you'll do is you'll do the bass line, bass move. You'll figure out what key you're in. If it says 5-1, you're gonna go from so to do in the bass line. The second thing you're gonna do is find the common tone. So between these 2 chords, if you look at the letter names in them, you're gonna have 1 letter in common. Find where it is and put it together. And I'll show you all of this in a second. Next, you're gonna want the leading tone to go up to do. So you find the leading tone, it is always somewhere in 5. You find the leading tone and make it go to do. And then you only have the leftovers, whatever you have left. Now we'll get into more voice leading principles a little bit later. I'm just gonna point out a couple of them to you as we do this. But voice leading principles, and there are tons more, by the way, this is just a starting place. But when you're doing these things, voice leading, 4-part voice leading, you're gonna try to avoid parallel fifths and octaves, like I did in that first video, just, I'm blaming the pre-coffee. But if you have 2 voices that are moving in fifths together in the same direction or in octaves, it just doesn't sound right. And I hope I get the chance to maybe demonstrate this to you in a Zoom class. It sounds sloppy. It kind of messes up some of the other stuff in the voice leading. So try to avoid 2 voices going parallel directions in fifths or octaves. Also, just so you know, we already talked about this a little bit, but root position is the most stable. It's the thing that sounds like the ending. When we're in choir and we're doing our sight reading and observations of your sight reading stuff, we look for a couple of things. We establish the key, we establish the time signature, look for accidentals, that kind of thing. But one of the other things that we often look for is, what is the ending chord? And do the basses have do? Because if they don't, as you know, it just doesn't sound like the ending. It doesn't sound final or stable. So your root position is going to be the most stable. There might be times as a composer that you would want it to be unstable because you want it to continue. You want it to go somewhere else, or for some artistic purpose, you just don't want it to sound like the ending. Generally speaking, when you're doing these things in voice leading, the leading tone, your 7th degree of the scale, you really always want it to go to the tonic. It just doesn't sound right. You want it to go up to do. So and you understand this instinctually. If you're singing a scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, it just doesn't sound right until somebody says do, right? It would be kind of like if you're singing along in your voice line and you have something like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, so. Of course, it could happen that way to resolve, but for the most part, to start off with, always make your leading tone go to do. It'll sound more traditional, and then also avoid doubling the 3rd or the 7th. So we have to double stuff. For now, double the root if you can. If you got a root 3rd and a 5th, double the root. It'll sound pretty standard. You could always break the rules later. If you avoid doubling the 3rd, and definitely avoid doubling the 7th. When you start doubling the 7th, the quality of the 7th changes. Its function changes. It just doesn't sound quite like you might hope. So these are principles. Notice I don't call them voice leading rules. Rules are made to be broken. So when you're studying music theory for the purpose of composition, you kind of study, my old music theory teacher used to say this: if you're a painter, you might learn how to paint the cow brown first. Later you can paint it pink, you can put polka dots on it for all I care, but paint it brown first. Learn the rules so that you can break them intentionally for artistic purposes. So anyway, these are just principles to start off with. Let's do a few of these together. I'm going to move our cadence writing steps back up here. So we are in the key of C, which means that the bass line for here, for 1, is going to be C. For 5, the bass line is going to be G. Do, re, mi, fa, so, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so our bass line is going to go from G, I'm just going to choose one, how about here? G to C. Okay, now within these chords, I'm actually not going to use the 7. I put it in parentheses because this is an authentic cadence. You can have a 7 in there. We're not going to do one right now, but it can happen. Okay, so within these chords, if you look at your cheat sheet, for this 5 chord, I should have a G, a B, and a D. And for this one, I should have C, E, and G. And for now, we're doubling the roots. Okay, so if you look in between these 2 chords, you're going to see a common tone. What is it? It's your G. There's a G in this one. There's a G in this one. So somebody, and I'm going to suggest maybe it should be the tenor line, should start on a G and stay on a G. So I'm going to do that. A G, and we've got a G. So over here, I've got 2 Gs. Now I need a B and a D to round things out. I think I'm going to put D in the alto and B in the soprano. Okay, so now I have all of the parts of the chord that I need for a G chord. And it's kind of nice and spread out. And choir people in our 4-part writing and exercises and our sight reading, we kind of understand how this chord makes sense. A lot of times, depending on what you're looking for, really good classic voice leading is kind of spread out here and gets closer towards the top to get a really balanced sounding chord. Not always the case, but it does happen. And then for 1, we definitely need the root. We've already got one of those, so I'll cross out the star. We also have a G, done. So we need an E and probably another C. So let's go ahead and put the E here and the C here. Okay, that's a pretty good authentic cadence. This is what it sounds like. Now I could do different combinations. What if I had, instead of doing this up here, maybe I made the sopranos take the E and the altos take the C. Now that would still sound fine. You're just going to have a bigger leap from here to here. This is what it would sound like. So like I said, there's lots of options, but if you start with your bass move and then do your common tone, the common tone does not have to be in the tenor line, by the way. It could be anywhere. Just happened that we built bottom up this time. But you start with your bass line, do your common tone, and then you look for your leading tone. Now, we did this naturally, but I'm just going to show you what I mean by this. In a C major scale, because that's what we're in, your 7th degree, your leading tone, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. B is your leading tone, here it is, and we in fact did resolve it up to C. That's one of the reasons why this one that we first did seems better to me than this one. Because here, you would have, if you're going from here to here in the soprano line, the leading tone doesn't resolve up to C, and that's always a good thing when you're starting out. And then of course here are our leftovers to fill out the chord. Okay, so that's a really great way of going about writing authentic cadences, and we're going to do some on the next page. Start with the bass, then find whatever leading tone is supposed to stay, or leading tone, find whatever common tone is supposed to stay the same between the two. Make your leading tone go to do, and then do your leftovers. And just having the letter names underneath, just to start out with, is probably a good idea. So now let's go to the plagal cadences. We're going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so we're still in C major. Let's put the letter names of what should be in each of these chords. A 1 chord in C major would be, again, C, E, G, and we're probably going to be doubling the root. Your 4 chord in C major is going to be F, A, C, again, probably doubling the root. And your common tone, if you're looking here, is here and here. So somewhere one of those voices is going to stay on a C. That kind of looks like a sharp. I didn't mean to do that. It's supposed to be a star. There we go. Now for plagal cadences, you have a 4 chord here and not a 5 chord, so your leading tone actually isn't in there. So we don't have to worry about this particular rule when we're doing plagal cadences. Let's see what we have. Okay, so bass move first. We're gonna go F to C, and I think I'm gonna go descending this time. We'll start on this F and go down to C. Now we have our common tone, and it will be C to C, right? And we did tenor last time, so I'm going to throw it in the alto line. We've got C and C. Now let's break down everything else. Okay, so up here I have an F, so we can get rid of that star. We've already doubled it. Now we have a C, already did that. We need another F and another A. Okay, so if we're going to try to keep the tenor in between these two, the only option really is A. If we tried to make the tenors do an F, they would be above here, or they would be down on the bass part, so it makes sense that they should be A. And then when you add your other F, that would put sopranos here. Okay, so we have one of each, F, A, C, and F, doubled root. Now over here, I've already got 2 Cs, done and done, and we need an E and a G. So let's think through this. If we put the E here, that makes sense. If we put the G there, it'll spread us out. Let's just try one and see what happens, okay? This is why pencil is important, by the way. I'm doing it in pen, but do as I say and not as I do. Okay, so try things in pencil. Don't be afraid to experiment and erase it. Okay, so I'm gonna put the E actually right here. Personally, I like having my top voices closer together if possible, and my lower voices farther apart, but your choice. You can experiment, play around with it. And then we need a G, and so we're gonna move that here. And this is what that sounds like. Definitely sounds like the end of a hymn on the Amen, right? Okay, now the last one is the Deceptive Cadence. And this one's gonna be a little bit different, obviously, but we're gonna start out the same way. Let's put we have our 5 chord, just like this one over here. So we're gonna need G, E, and D. Probably gonna double the root again, just for now. And then we're gonna move to a 6 chord, because instead of ending back on the 1, it's gonna turn around deceptively and go do something else. Like, we're about to end the phrase, yay! Oh, nope, just kidding, keep going to something else. This one's gonna have A, C, and E. And there are some other options to doubling. You don't have to double the A in this particular situation, but let's just keep things consistent for a while. You can always break that rule later. Okay, so first thing we do, we've got our bass move. We're gonna go from G to A. Boom. Okay, so that's done, and we don't need to worry about doubling those. Second thing, do we have a common tone between these 2 chords? Do we? We do not. Okay, so just like the plagal, the plagal cadence on this one underneath here didn't have a leading tone, this one doesn't have a common tone. So as you're working through, this still works, but as you go through each step, if you get to a step and you're like, that doesn't exist, skip and go to the next one, because sometimes cadences don't have all 4 steps. All 4 exist in the authentic one, or what we call the perfect authentic cadence. You might hear it called that. And then some of these other ones, they just don't have the same rules. Okay, but do we have a leading tone? Do we have a B? Why, yes, we do. And we also have a C. So we're gonna want our B to go to C. So let's see here. Let's make the sopranos have it. Why not? See what happens. So we have B to C. And let's see what we have over here that we can kind of spread out. We're gonna want another G, and we're gonna want a D. And again, I prefer to spread these out and keep these closer together, but you can experiment with what you like. I'm gonna throw another G here. And I'm gonna throw a D here. Okay, I'm sure that'll sound lovely. And then we go to our 6 chord, and we already have an A. I might want another A. If I put the A here, however, guess what happens? G, G, that's an octave. A, A, that's an octave. We don't want that parallel octave. Okay, so those parallel fifths and octaves can make things sound just a bit funky. So let's see if we can send this G somewhere else. Instead of an A, let's send it down to an E. Ooh, Oops, I went over the line a little bit. Here we go. So we have A, we have C, and we have E. We have all three of them. Let's maybe throw another A in there. We could. If I put the A up here, it might make the altos jump a little bit. I like to keep the alto line or the tenor line really quiet. And what I mean by that is not as much movement, like keep it pretty stagnant. So we could essentially, it is a minor chord, we could double the third. We could move this down to a C because it's already a minor chord, it won't mess it up. Having the C's up here in the two voices might sound a little different than we like. We also have the option to go up to the E and double the fifth. I think I might like that option better, but we can listen to them and see what they sound like and see what we like. I think I'm gonna go with it. Okay, so we're gonna do an E. So we're actually doubling our fifth, okay, which is probably more common in deceptive cadences. This is what it sounds like. Okay, so in the next video, we're gonna keep this going on. But in the next videos, we're gonna do some examples of cadences. These are all in C major. We're gonna pull ourselves out of C major and just practice 4-part voice leading or writing with just these 2 chords at a time. It'll either be 5-1, 4-1, or 5-6 are 3 basic types of cadences. And occasionally we might even add a 7th in there, maybe even some inversions.